Welcome to Reels on the Rocks, the show where your hosts Whiskey and Sweet Tea discuss film from the unpretentious perspective. Everyone has regrets, even Alfred Hitchcock. Was 1948's Rope really a failed experiment, or a gem ahead of its time? Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and as always, please be advised that spoilers are ahead. Whiskey, have you ever considered yourself intellectually superior?
No. Frankly, I feel like that is the thought process of a school shooter.
Oh my god. The irony of that statement. Welcome back, everybody.
Hi!
We are back again with movies that their own directors hated, or directors that hated their own movies. But
what if the movie hates the director?
I mean, if the entire cast hates the director, doesn't that count as like movie? I feel like there's quite a few like that.
I'm very interested. We'll get into it in the later half, but welcome back, everybody. I thought I would take us on kind of a journey. I think I alluded to my little mini topic in a past episode, but I think it is finally time we talk a little bit about what the Criterion Collection is and some other things that might have been overlooked by people. So, we've talked about the Criterion Collection because it's kind of seen as this, like, mark of quality on films. You know, like they choose what films are considered high art or whatever. And we've kind of talked about how that's not exactly true. They also like to choose things like Armageddon or Mean Girls, or like, you know, it's pretty much like...
Oh my god, Mean Girls is in there? I'm so excited.
I'm pretty sure. I was watching a Closet Picks, and I think it was... it might have been Micah Monroe. I don't know. I'm pretty sure Mean Girls was on there. It was something like that, at least.
Was it the Heathers?
It might have been Heathers. I'm pretty sure it was Mean Girls, though. Anyway, my point is, the Criterion Collection, it's not them saying that the movies are, like, better or anything. It's just kind of movies that they want to preserve. And I've explained that in past episodes. But we're not just talking about the Criterion Collection. I thought it would be good to talk about lesser-known film distributors, because that's what Criterion essentially is.
Right.
So it's actually a spin-off of Janus Films, and it's a home video distribution company that, according to like Google or their mission statement or whatever, they focus on licensing, restoring, and distributing important classic and contemporary films. Janus Films started off as kind of the same idea, but it was foreign films coming to American audiences, which is why, you know, when you went to film school and you saw like Italian films or, you know, something from like another country, it usually was Janus Films. I'm sure many film student types who might listen to the show know what I'm talking about. And I'm sure even you remember seeing Janus Films in a class or, you know, on one of yours. So that was kind of where it started, was just like, oh, here's, you know, Black Orpheus, or, you know, a film by Ingmar Bergman. How are we going to bring this to the States? Oh, like, and here's a home video distributor that will bring like Wild Strawberries so American audiences can see it. So that's where it started. But part of what gave me the idea for this little mini segment was, and I think it was the last episode, it was a past episode. I recently talked about how, like, in my movie collection, I recently got a copy of American Werewolf in London from Arrow Video. And I don't know if any of you listening have heard of Arrow Video. I had heard of them because they have, like, a couple of, like, they're known in the horror space because they have a lot of horror movies in their collection, and they, you know, might not be as prestigious as the Criterion, but they have their own kind of like visual flair. One thing I really love is they have unique cover art for their films. So, and that's actually kind of why I picked my copy of American Werewolf in London, is it has a very unique cover to the Blu-ray case. And right after our last episode, I actually sent T their version, because Arrow Video did a release of Dune 1984, the Lynch version. And their cover art is so cool. I don't really plan on owning it physically because I don't really think I would watch it super frequently, but if I was going to get a copy, I would get the Arrow Video just because that cover art with the worm and everything, it looks super cool. And frankly, the original poster and VHS cover and everything, it looks a little silly. I'm not a big fan of the David Lynch Dune cover. But so Arrow Video, I just thought I would kind of highlight a couple of these film distributors, and some of them I'm sure you guys have heard of, and kind of talk about where they might be able, or business opportunity for someone if they're looking to get into film distribution, because I think there's a gap in the market. But we'll start with Arrow Films. So it's a British distributor, and it specializes in cult films, world and classic cinema, art house, horror. So that kind of explains why I had heard of it. And they also have a video on demand service called Arrow Player. But just some of the things in... Yeah, right? Nice name, right? Like, it's actually pretty good on-brand stuff. So some of the films in their collection, there's Dune 1984, the David Lynch one I already mentioned. They've got Donnie Darko. They've got Dark City. They've got The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. And then they've got some other stuff like Spawn, which, weird superhero movie from the 90s. Not everyone's probably heard of it, but kind of shows that they go for lowbrow stuff as well. And they also have Lost in Space, the 1960s version. Just like Criterion Collection, Arrow Video, they're not the only ones who have, David Lynch's Dune. You can get the regular Universal release of it. What they do, they have unique artwork, they have special features. My American Werewolf in London has kind of a neat little menu where it's playing parts of the film. It's very minimalist and kind of not in the way of anything. So I don't know if they do that for all of their films or if they do specific ones for different films.
Right.
But that's kind of the thing. It's like the Criterion Collection, you get sort of a mark of quality and extra bonus features and things like essays that come with the film. Arrow Video sort of does the same thing, at least from my experience with that one copy I have.
So Arrow Video isn't just grabbing what's available just to make some quick cash. They actually also care about,
If Lost in Space is your favorite TV show, you could just get it on DVD or Blu-ray or whatever from, I don't know if it was CBS or which network aired it back in the day.
Yeah.
But if it's your favorite TV show, you could get an Arrow Video version of it, and the cover will look cool, and you might get some extra bonus features that aren't on the basic release. So it's sort of a good collector's edition, which I would argue is sort of part of the reason people go for Criterion versions of the film as well.
I have also seen, what is it called? Manta Labs? That's what I've
Interesting.
heard of.
That one didn't come up when I was looking for these.
I don't know. I've looked at them a few times. They're just expensive, but I don't know if they just do, their thing is just, really bomb cases, or if they actually distribute the movie. But, I remember, when Barbie came out, I really wanted the Manta Labs Barbie edition. It's just one of these things where it's just always, they're just a lot. And then there's other ones that they may just be grabbing whatever, but they also, because they just grab whatever, we get some kind of the weird sort of forgotten stuff distributed to the public. A big one for me that I love is Film Rise. They're the ones that, until it got rebooted and everything, they're the ones that put out Unsolved Mysteries. I think they also put out Fact or Fiction. Just
okay.
Weird stuff that kind of you've seen but forgotten about. But they're not putting out essays like you're talking about with the Arrow Video. But another
I don't think there was an essay. Yeah, right. I don't think like my Arrow video of American Werewolf, it didn't come with any essays. I was just using that as an example because like all of my uh, Criterion films come with essays, but that's also like Criterion is very academic. At least that's kind of the vibe they put out. And the other thing I kind of theorize, at least, because a lot of film people love Criterion. It doesn't matter if you're like a film bro or whatever. Like most people like them, and a lot of people have their favorite movie in the collection somewhere,
Yeah.
or one of their favorite movies. So they're really well liked. But my theory for why Criterion is so idolized and put up on a pedestal, I think, is because most film people who went to film school were introduced to Criterion through film school. Because another thing that they are big into is so like with who they say that they serve, they kind of focus on film and media scholars, cinephiles as they say, or public or academic libraries. So they're much more about like education, so that's why you always see them at film schools, because they, at least in their own words, they serve those communities. So a lot of people are probably introduced to them that way. And the libraries make sense because I'm pretty sure if you hop on over to your public library, in the modern day, they usually rent out films. Now they even rent video games at a lot of public libraries.
Yeah,
but for films,
that's pretty cool.
A lot of public libraries have Criterion versions of the films, and they've probably been gifted those by Criterion. So again, I think this is why they're kind of so highly regarded, and a lot of film people will defend them, and you know, they're kind of seen as a mark of quality because they are something that educated you, like when you were learning about filmmaking. So they're seen as, it's like the I'm trying to think of like a textbook company.
Like Macmillan and Hell, or McGraw and
Macmillan, thank you. Macmillan's a perfect example. Like everyone, you know, I'm pretty sure most people don't necessarily have like warm and fuzzy feelings, but they think of Macmillan as being legitimate. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
if you
yeah,
wanna
yeah.
learn mathematics, like you're not going to get any nonsense in a Macmillan published book. But moving on, like I'm glad you're shouting out some of these boutique publishers as
There's
well,
another
or
one.
distributors.
I popped over really quick, and when you're talking, I was listening, but you were talking. That's when you got to the part about Lost in Space. Check me a minute, because I popped over to my cabinet because I wanted to check the back of some of these. I'm like, there's some that I know of, that I know I've seen like the logo for a million times. I can't remember what it's called. Another one that I seem to have a lot from is a smaller one, New Horizon. Now, you know, I tend to lean a lot into TV with what I collect, and so some of like these like lesser known shows or not big hit shows that I like have been put out on New Horizon. I think the one that I saw, I think, was A Haunting. That was like a really big show for me. It scared me to death when it first came out, but I got really into it later. There's one that I can't think of what it is, and it's bugging me.
It might be the next one I want to talk about, because the next one actually focuses on TV. So the next one I wrote down is Shout Factory.
Yes, that's what I was thinking. Shout Factory. Thank you. They put out my box set of Designing Women.
They've done that. If you're a fan of Nickelodeon, Shout Factory has basically done every Nickelodeon show you can think of. They've done a lot of classic TV, which is, I'm not surprised you know Shout Factory, because they have stuff like Johnny Carson and the Carol Burnett Show.
Yep.
If you're an anime fan, they have a whole library of anime shows and movies. So, but they seem to really focus on TV. And and I forgot to mention, so Arrow was founded in 1991. And Shout Factory was founded in 2002. And in 2012, they created a spin-off called Scream Factory, which focuses on horror stuff.
Yep.
So they even have their own little, right? So yeah, no, I'm not surprised. I was kind of thinking, I wonder if T actually has some Shout Factory DVDs.
I was like, I could see the logo in my mind, and I couldn't put it into words.
There you go. So another one for like horror fans that came up when I was like looking for these, which I recognized. I don't own anything from them, but Vinegar Syndrome, which is specialized in protecting and preserving genre films. So not just horror, but like every genre you could think of. For a bunch of these, like partly so I could find examples of the sort of stuff they sell, I actually went to their shops. So like when I was seeing the Carol Burnett show and stuff with Shout Factory, it was like, oh, you could buy it for this or whatever. So with Vinegar Syndrome, a lot of people think of them as horror, partly also because the name sounds really gross. So you think of like gross, like horror genre films. But they also do holiday films. They do supernatural films. So that would be up your alley. Psychological, comedy, animation, documentary. So it is definitely much more like nerdy stuff. I neglected to write down they do sci-fi, they do other types of horror and stuff, obviously, but it's like nerd stuff. So right. I think if you are into any kind of geeky culture stuff, you've probably heard of Vinegar Syndrome, because it's not just spooky stuff. They do, you know, as I said, animation, and holiday was kind of one that I wanted to write down because I'm like, that's an interesting genre. So I guess they have like Christmas movies and stuff like that.
Do you know how many Christmas movies Hallmark puts out a year? They probably distribute for them. I have no idea.
Maybe. I should have clicked on the holiday thing to see what kind of movies that they do, but I thought that was interesting. I'm like, oh wow, that's a genre you don't really hear about. And then the last one that I thought mentioning, Severin Films, which I had heard of, but I don't own anything by them, and I wasn't sure what they specialize in. So they are cult films, and my God, if you're talking about like a distributor that has the most like obscure, like, oh, you've never heard of these movies, it's Severin, because I had never heard of any of these movies. The one that I wrote down, they distribute one called Jack the Ripper, and it is like an older film. It looks like it's in black and white or whatever. So like, oh, and they also do, like, they have a whole bunch of shark movies, so that's like a whole thing. Obscure foreign horror, so a lot of like giallo films and things like that.
Okay.
But yeah, so it's out of all of these like boutique distributors I was looking at, they win the award for the most obscure. I've never heard of most of the films on their stuff. Even the shark movies were all just like very B horror, crappy kind of. No offense, but it's bless them for preserving these films, because I don't think anyone else would have thought of preserving them. You know what it kind of reminds me of? Like in the film Juno, you know how Elliot Page's character is really into like kind of genre horror, and it's like, right. Oh, have you heard of The Wizard of Gore? That's the sort of thing I could see being on Severin Films. Like, just what? What are you talking about?
Just out there, bizarre. I did want to touch on what you talked about with the Criterion, about how it's not necessarily, the cream of the crop. We had this discussion at dinner the other night with my uncle, because they were like, well, why he went to go, because they were half off right now, he went to go buy some Criterion movies from Barnes & Noble. He was like, oh, their selection is awful right now. And it's basically because he was also under the impression that because it's in there, it must be like super important or, super. And so we were talking like Jaws' 50th anniversary is coming up.
Oh yeah.
Jaws isn't part of it.
Oh yeah.
And they were like,
well,
why
technically
isn't Jaws
the anniversary happened. It was back in June, but it's this year, so still
the big screening's coming up still.
Yeah.
And they were like, well, why isn't Jaws in there? And I'm like, most likely because I think I read online somewhere that it was because Jaws is too big. Like, it will always be preserved. It doesn't need Criterion's help for preservation. I feel like Criterion's main mission, and along with a lot of these other indie ones that you talked about, like Arrow, Shout, Vinegar, their goal is to preserve as many of these movies as possible. Now, Criterion just happens to pick ones that people either remember, or filmmakers have said, because they work a lot with filmmakers too, have said are relevant and important to hold on to. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's like the best of the best. You know what I mean? And even just because there's the top of the chain of movies doesn't necessarily mean that what's not at the top is necessarily anything bad.
Yeah, well, and that's like another kind of thing I've always brought up whenever people are like, trying to make it out like Criterion is like, oh, these are the best movies.
They have
Like,
Freddy Got
you
Fingered,
can't
enough said.
well, you can't predict what they're going to choose. Like, Freddy Got Fingered is one, Armageddon is one that a lot of people think is just like a crappy action movie.
Yeah.
Like, they're picking what they want, and I think that they kind of, I don't know who decides on that stuff. I don't know if there's a committee or what the deal is, but I do think that whoever is in charge of that at Criterion does get a little bit of joy out of like subverting people's expectations.
Yep.
Because Jaws is, a seminal classic, one of the best movies ever made. Not in the Criterion collection, but we've also talked about, because, T's favorite film is Gone with the Wind. And I don't think that's in the Criterion collection either.
It is
but
not.
I don't think that's not like a mark against it. In fact, it might even be kind of like Jaws, where it's like such a big movie that they don't feel that they need to preserve it.
Right. And I also think movies like Jaws, Gone with the Wind, bigger films, they're considered kind of like the crown jewels of the studio. And they really sort of want to limit who distributes them. They want to be the ones to distribute them, because one, it's quality control. Two, what do they always say? Like, scarcity equals rarity, which increases value. And then three, they just want to make sure that they're the ones getting the cash out of it. Because if, let's say, they release Jaws or Gone with the Wind to Criterion, if it has a better edition than what they're putting out, and they're already not putting out that many to begin with, they're not going to make much money off of it. So there's lots of reasons why stuff doesn't end up in some of the collections, but it's important that things like Shout Factory, Criterion, Vinegar, Filmrise, all these other ones exist, Arrow, because they are preserving, kind of like the dark horses of movies and of TV.
Well, and the other thing with these guys, Criterion, I think, gets gifted a lot of things because they are so prestigious. But, like, a lot of these places are actually paying a license to... Because, again, like, Arrow Video does not own American Werewolf in London. It's a Universal film. And so is... That's actually kind of funny, because so is David Lynch's Dune. Not all of their films are Universal films, but like they don't own The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. They don't own Spawn. They're paying a license to be able to distribute a specialized edition of the film. So that's another kind of limiting factor. Is like they have to pay the studio to even do that. With Criterion, it's a little murky because sometimes like they are the ones that are preserving the film. A great example, like you mentioned, that Vivian Lee film. Recently, like one of my favorite Kubrick films is Paths of Glory, and I was planning on upgrading to a Blu-ray. There are none.
Yeah.
There are no Blu-rays outside of the Criterion collection for Paths of Glory. They are the only ones that have it. So thank God for the Criterion collection, because if it wasn't for them, the film would probably they wouldn't think that it's worth even putting out anymore. And that's another reason I think people have such an emotional reaction to like defending the Criterion collection, is I think in a lot of situations, they are the only ones that are even like still printing certain films. So right. I think there's that. But like going back to like, so as I said, I think if anyone with any kind of money or influence is like listening to the show, which probably not, but I do think that there is a big market in expanding to other special interests with these kinds of things. And, having a good presentation, having special artwork and stuff. Perfect example. Again, I'm kind of upgrading my own film collection. And do you know another film that is not in print? What About Bob?
Really?
I cannot find it in Blu-ray. It does not exist. I have a DVD, and that is all that's available. And if I remember correctly, it's actually kind of hard to even find like a good DVD of it.
There's literally an entire Reddit page about has there ever been a Blu-ray release of What About Bob?
There you go. So, like, this is what I'm talking about. Like, it is kind of, you and I, it's a great comedy. It's something we might even talk about on the show in the future. I think it's kind of a underappreciated classic. I think it's one of the best comedies ever made. And thankfully, I've actually seen some memes of it. Like, recently, with the Jaws 50th anniversary, I saw a funny What About Bob Photoshop where it's the shark attacking the boat and Bob is like strapped to the mast and the kid is like doing the dive off the front. If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about.
Right.
But there you go, man. Like it's Frank Oz directed it. It's, again, like maybe I'm crazy. I feel like other film people might know about it. It's a comedy, so it's not as prestigious as other films, but this is like a perfect example of like if there was a comedy film, boutique film distributor, and they did comedies, you could have like a Ghostbusters, you could have What About Bob, you could have It Happened One Night. Like, see, I'm trying to think of like classic comedies, Dumb and Dumber. Like what if that genre had as much love as like horror and sci-fi? What if you could get an edition of Dumb and Dumber that had like specialized artwork on the cover? Maybe you had like new interviews with Jim Carrey, and to me it seems like it's a missed opportunity.
But the case is a fuzzy dog bus.
There you go. Like, yeah, maybe it's like got a fuzzy dog. It's like made out of the same material as the the dog car, which is kind of funny too because the practicality of that is awful. So like imagine that being on your shelf, and that's kind of funny in and of itself. Like, why is there like carpet in your DVD case? Oh, that's my Silly Hut Jr. edition of Dumb and Dumber. I don't know what you would call a comedy boutique.
And what this all really goes back to is what Christopher Nolan has again said: we need to all be collecting physical media. We are the protectors of it for the next generation.
It's really bleak how things are. Like, if you listen to this show, you've heard us yap about this ad nauseum. We're always saying like, buy movies, buy physical copies. Recently, I was watching, there's like an archive YouTube channel of some news guys that I watch. Maybe some of you listening have heard of them. They used to be called ETC News. Now they're called Internet Today. Shout out to the show. I'm a big fan. Now they kind of do more like actual news, politics, and things like that. But back in the day, they used to be on Machinima. And because they were on the Warner Brothers umbrella, they were sort of like their entertainment news thing. And that's how I heard of them. And someone has archived all of their deleted videos because when Machinima went under, they just nuked all of their old videos. So someone's archived them, and it is kind of crazy to go back to like 2014, 2015, because they're reporting on what Netflix was adding and taking off of the platform. Like, that's how big Netflix was back in the day, and that also kind of goes to show, like, this has been a slow boil. We're all the frogs in the pot, and we're at a point now where we are so reliant on streaming media because it's a lot of what kids these days have grown up with. I mean, think about that. Back in 2014, it was so big knowing what like Netflix had to offer that it was reported on by like media. Like, oh, next month they're getting rid of Shawshank Redemption. And it just kind of goes to show how slowly we have become a society that we just stream everything. We don't own anything anymore. Because 10 years ago we were becoming used to it. And now that, and frankly, I think that's kind of why I hadn't been building my own film library until the last like 5 years.
Yep.
Because I was guilty of this, like, oh, why should I buy Twin Peaks? It's on Netflix. Why should I buy Friends? It's on Netflix. And it's not anymore. And now it's like, if you want to watch any of this stuff, you have to have like 12 different,
basically just go back to having cable.
It's cable again, but it's worse than cable because like in some cases, if you buy films digitally, you're buying a license the same way these distributors are buying a license to publish.
You know what's interesting? So, I watch less newer stuff now that lots of stuff is released on streaming. Like the new must-see stuff on streaming. I see less new stuff now because my mind is always like, it'll be there. I'll get to it eventually. And then I just end up never watching it.
I'm kind of guilty of this. I'm currently catching up on a whole bunch of Hulu shows. That's some interesting movie news if you're following it. Disney's going to axe Hulu. Not a big deal because they're just going to put everything on Disney Plus, which I find
Everybody in my Golden
hilarious.
Girls group was panicking. They were like, "Oh my god, we're gonna watch the Golden Girls." I'm like, "Everyone, relax. They're just gonna merge the platforms."
Yeah, which is hilarious. Like in the future, I'm gonna be watching "It's Always Sunny" and "Alien Earth" on Disney Plus.
Speaking of the Golden Girls, we never got a physical media release of The Golden Palace, the sequel series to The Golden Girls. Shout, please get on that if you're listening.
Shout, get on it. But yeah, no, this is kind of why I think it was worth talking about, just because we've talked about the Criterion collection. I think we probably will in the future. Maybe we'll just tell people to go back and listen to this segment on the episode. But just in general, I think that this is an ecosystem I think is very important. I think it's very fun for fans. Because, like horror and sci-fi fans are the most vocal and they tend to have the most disposable income, I guess. Maybe that's why they're pandered to the most. But I think it's really important, and I think it would be cool if there were some boutique distributors to fill in some of the gaps. And again, maybe I just didn't find them in my armchair investigation that I did, just looking for some boutique distributors, but comedy, LGBT plus movies, romantic comedies, like, these are things that, like, I guess you would say, like, kind of less cinephile types like these movies. But I think that if you had a product that was worth going the extra mile, paying $10 more for, these people, like if Titanic is your favorite movie and it's got like a Vinegar Syndrome release or something, like people will go for that. And those are always my favorite ones. Criterion's the biggest example, but Arrow, I just have one film in their collection, but dang, I love the presentation. I love the artwork. I haven't even scratched the surface of all the special features on my copy, but it's really good. So I thought this was kind of a fun little idea for a mini topic to kind of go into, because I don't think people talk about it enough.
It reminds people what's out there.
Back to the main topic. You were saying something about superiority.
Yeah, so just everybody knows that if you're morally superior, not morally, if you're intellectually superior, morals don't apply to you. Everybody knows that, right? That's like a thing, right? I mean, that's what society kind of says. But before we get into that and why that's relevant to today's topic, what are you drinking?
Well, you see, I thought, speaking of Orson Welles and his wonderful commercials, I thought this occasion called for some champagne. Wouldn't you say, T?
Oh my god, I agree so much, actually.
So I'm specifically drinking Corbel California champagne. It's a Brut. That's the brand established in 1882, apparently. Didn't know they were doing that in California that much. But, yeah, and so I take it you are also partaking in some of the bubbly.
I am partaking in some of the bubbly. I did not have lots of extra scratch this week for the good stuff. So I'm technically drinking Prosecco, which is basically champagne, because as we know, champagne can only be made in the Champagne region of France. Champagne is basically
same,
Prosecco.
Pretty much. Same with mine. Mine was like $14.
Yeah, but like,
frankly, I'm surprised.
Yours sounds classier, because mine is basically just, cupcake Prosecco.
There you go. Well, like, that's the funny thing. It sounds really prestigious, but it's like, frankly, I'm kind of surprised they're even allowed to call it champagne, because, like you said, it has to be from France in the Champagne region. I thought you had to call it. Who knows? Maybe in Trump's America, we're allowed to call it what we want to call it now. Who knows?
Now, if I had all the cash in the world, I would have opted for Perrier Jouet, Grand Brut, but I didn't have that much money to throw down on one episode.
Well, and to be honest, I think the yahoos that we're referencing by drinking champagne probably couldn't afford the good stuff either.
Yeah, they probably couldn't.
So why don't you tell me about the film? I thought this was a neat pick, and I'm surprised. So I'm very interested for you to explain.
So the movie we're discussing today is 1948's Rope. Had you ever seen this before?
I am still not sure, because it's...
After watching it, we're unsure.
So, like, early on, you know, especially like when you're into movies, you watch a lot of Hitchcock's films, and despite him being a celebrated director, I think a lot of people would be surprised to see that a lot of his stuff is kind of basic. And I don't even mean that in like a mean way, but like every so often you get like a jewel, like your favorite Alfred Hitchcock film.
Rear Window.
Well, Rear Window, that's not the one I was thinking of.
Oh,
That's the one
my
that I was
favorite.
thinking. Interesting. What's the one? I'm blanking on the name because it's about the woman and it's
Oh, Rebecca.
Rebecca. Thank you. Like
That's
Rebecca
like right up
has,
there,
like,
but Rear Window is still my favorite.
there you go. Well, Rear Window applies too because it's very grand. There's like this insane set that he built. But Rebecca's another example where it's like there's these very exquisite sets. There's a lot of different locations and stuff like that. But then you have films like this, or you have like Dial M for Murder. I remember I had seen because it's a lot like this one. It's also based on a play, if I remember correctly. It also takes place in one location, and it also like I remember not liking that one so much because it kind of over-explained itself, and I remember it feeling kind of, I don't know. But this one, I feel like I have seen it. But at the same time, watching it, I was like Gandalf. I have no memory of this film. So I don't know if I had seen it so long ago that I couldn't remember all the specifics, or if I had like heard of it but never actually decided to watch it. But then there were things about it that felt very familiar. So I don't know. I genuinely don't know if I've seen this before because it felt like something I'd seen before, but I don't know. But that being said, why don't you get into the nitty gritty? I'm curious, like, how was this received and all that jazz? I want to know what exactly about this Hitchcock didn't like.
So, this is directed by Alfred Hitchcock, obviously. This was written by Arthur Lawrence. I have an asterisk next to his name to come back to later. He also wrote the book. And by book, for those of you who don't know, we're talking about when a musical or play is written. The physical written part of it, the dialogue and everything is referred to as the book. He wrote the book for West Side Story and Gypsy. And he also wrote the screenplay for The Turning Point. This was adapted from Rope, which is a stage play from 1929 by Patricia. Oh my God. Here we go. Everybody take a shot. I can't read my handwriting.
Woo!
By Patricia. I want to say it's no, it's not even Patricia. I'm so sorry. Patrick Hamilton. Not even the right gender. The cinematography was by Joseph A. Valentine, who also did the cinematography for Joan of Arc and The Wolfman, and William V. Schall, who also worked with Joseph A. Valentine on Joan of Arc. He also did Billy the Kid. Music was by David Batolf and Francis Polinek. I think they just used one of his pieces. I don't think he wrote it for the film. I do not believe Francis Polinek wrote something for the film. The budget for this movie was between 1.5 to 2 million, and at the box office it grossed 2.2 to 2.7. So. Ooh. Not a huge success. In the cast, the players, as I wrote it, was John Dahl played Brandon Shaw. You've also seen him in Gun Crazy, and he played a role in Spartacus. Farley Granger played Philip Morgan. You will also recognize him as one of the guys from Strangers on a Train. Joan Chandler played Janet Walker. Sir Cedric Hardwicke played Mr. Henry Kentley. Constance Collier played Mrs. Anita Atwater. Douglas Dick played Kenneth Lawrence. We had Edith Evanson as Mrs. Wilson. Dick Hogan in his very brief role as David Kelly. David Kentley. And this was also his last role. And... of course, the incomparable... No, it's nothing bad. James
No,
Stewart.
they actually killed him for the movie.
Right?
He was being method.
Super method. He was just dead. And then we had the incomparable James Stewart, Jimmy Stewart, as Rupert Cadell. So this movie was adapted from the play Rope, as I said, by Patrick Hamilton. This was Alfred Hitchcock's first color film, and one of his, what people refer to as underrated. It was not well received. It was not well received. Just to give you sort of a little gist of, and one of them actually cracks me up when I think about what we have in movies nowadays. Variety wrote, Hitchcock could have chosen a more entertaining subject which to use the arresting camera and staging technique displayed in Rope. The continuous action and extremely mobile camera are technical features which industry craftsmen will make much, but to the layman audience, effect is of a distracting interest.
Man, Variety used a lot of big words back in the day.
Right? The Chicago Tribune, this one cracks me up. If Mr. Hitchcock's purpose in producing this macabre tale of murder was to shock and horrify, he has succeeded all too well. The opening scene is sickeningly graphic, establishing a feeling of revulsion which seldom left me the entire film. Undeniably clever in all its aspects, this film is a gruesome affair, and to me at least was a grueling spectacle not recommended to the sensitive.
The opening scene is graphic, everybody.
I know.
It's so funny. This year we had a movie where a kid eats a knife, and that it's, oh boy.
Yeah, this person would roll over. The New Yorker wrote, in addition to the fact that it has little or no movement, Rope is handicapped by some of the most relentlessly arch dialogue you've ever heard. I don't even know what arch dialogue even means.
Yeah, right. I've never heard arch as like a descriptor.
And
I don't know. Yeah.
The New York Times wrote, the novelty of the picture is not in the drama itself, it being plainly deliberate, rather thin exercise in suspense, but merely in method which Mr. Hitchcock has used to stretch the intended tension for the length of the little stunt, and with due regard for his daring and for that of transatlantic films, one must bluntly observe that the method is neither effective nor does it appear that it could be. So
this is also interesting too, because this is kind of like one of the things that you hear about Hitchcock in film school or in conversation is like his idea of, because he's called the master of suspense, and it's like one thing I always heard is it's like if you want to have people sit on the edge of their seat, like show them a bomb under the table and then like have
nobody
the
reacting
characters
to
talking.
it.
Right? And that's what this movie is essentially. Like, and I guess that's kind of interesting too. It makes me wonder if the reception of the play was bad too, because I mean, clearly this was successful enough as a play, that it was adapted into film. So
the reason I picked this one is Roger Ebert, not one of our favorite people, but he wrote how Alfred Hitchcock had called Rope, quote, an experiment that did not work out, end quote, and he was happy to see it kept out of release for most of 3 decades. So basically the fact that it was kind of just forgotten, he was very, very happy with. Now, you pointed out something very, very important here. What was the reception to the play? And was it equal of this film? Now, from what my understanding is that it was a well-received play. It was started over in, London and then was brought over here to the US. I couldn't find anything that really said that it was like, not well received or anything like this. It is based in reality. We'll get to that later.
Interesting. Very interesting.
The point which people are making is this works as a stage play. They're saying it does not work as a film. Because as you noticed, this was the almost like the OG of the one take movie. Kind of.
Yes.
I mean, it's not,
yes. This is great. Me being Mr. Cinematography nerd, I really liked way back in the day. I'm still a defender of Birdman. I know some people think it's pretentious. I really enjoyed it. It was one of my favorite films that year. But common misconception is that it was like the one that started the whole one take thing. Not even close. And I noticed that with this film too. I was like, oh wow, cool, it's doing the whole, all in one shot thing. Like within the first 10 minutes, I'm like, oh cool, they're not going to cut. And clearly there are cuts, like there are transitions, but it's done in a way that you don't notice it. And one in which you definitely notice it because they keep zooming in to like, I think it's always, I think it's Rupert.
It's usually
once.
someone's back.
it's someone's back or it's their like chest or whatever, and then it like zooms out. So it's like obviously they cut there and then they reset for like the next segment. But I was watching and I'm like, oh cool, I've never seen it done this far back in time. So this might, who knows, this might not be the first, but this is the earliest I've seen of the whole one take movie thing. So that was really cool and definitely kind of pioneering for the time. And obviously, like, so this story and everything, let's spell it out. We always say like you should watch the film before listening to the podcast, but just to explain what this movie is. So opens on a murder.
Yes.
And then the whole movie is a dinner party while the body is still in the apartment, which is great for like, a play. It's great for this movie too. I actually enjoyed this a bit, but you can kind of see how it works as a play because it's like, it just doesn't stop. I'm guessing it was a 1-act play because it's also very short as a film. It's only like an hour and 20 minutes. So I would be shocked if there was an intermission if you were seeing this on the stage. I'm pretty sure you could do it all in one go. And frankly, I think it would be better all in one go.
It does. According to Wikipedia, they said it has a 3-act dramatic structure. The action is continuous, punctuated only by the curtain fall at the end of each act. I do not know. So there's not an intermission, but they do break in acts in the play. I don't know where they would be.
love to see the...
Yeah.
I'd love to see the play, but I actually think that it might be better as a film in that case, because I think the fact that it doesn't stop increases the tension. Like, I bring up the bomb thing because that's kind of Hitchcock's whole deal, is he, not just in this film, but dramatic irony is like his favorite thing. Tell the audience something the characters don't know and have them stew in it. And that's like the point of this movie.
Well,
like, is that there is a dead body right there, and no one else but the murderers know about it.
Exactly, and so that's
I kind of love that.
This is like the most tense dinner party ever. Like, what is it, in Strangers of a Train? They like talk about how, which I actually kind of think it's hilarious in this scene, but people have talked about this is like the most intense tennis game ever. In Strangers on a Train. It's like the same thing. It's like, imagine that, but like uncomfortably, and in a good way uncomfortably, in my opinion. Stretched out over 90 minutes. So
I guess I have two questions then. Like, so my main thing, I don't really care what film critics from forever ago thought about this. It's interesting. It's definitely like worth noting. I want to know why Hitchcock didn't like this film, and I also want to know why people seem to think it worked as a play but not as a film.
So I couldn't really find what it is he didn't like about it. The fact that he refers to it as an experiment that didn't work, I think for him it was sort of, because again, this was still early in his American career, I understand. Because if you think about it, Rebecca was 1940. That was his first American film. I know he did Lifeboat before this, and also this was his first color film. I do think he was genuinely, hurt by the fact, not hurt, but not like, you know what I mean? Disappointed that it didn't land with audiences. Because I do feel like he's definitely he makes movies for an audience. He's not like Inarritu or somebody who's like pretentious and is like, well, clearly y'all just didn't get it. He was able to take those highbrow sort of things and make them into movies that an audience, the mass audience, could enjoy. Now, also to be said, at the time, audiences, I kind of think, were a little bit more, I don't even want to say that. Never mind. I'm not going to say that.
They were idiots.
No, I was actually going to say
stupid, illiterate boobs.
I was actually going to say that they were actually, I think the audience that would have gone to have seen this would have been more educated than the typical audience today. But keep in mind, this is when it was in mass release.
Well, I also don't think, that might seem mean, but I made a joke earlier about how Variety was using bigger words.
Yeah.
Like, it's one of the, I don't want to come off as like pretentious or, that's the whole antithesis to this podcast. But there is a bit of truth to that, back in the day, like more people read even when, it's so weird. Like nowadays education, like you can learn anything you want to because you have the internet in your pocket, but people are like less curious or like, no one wants to learn anything anymore or read anything. And frankly, like, so I don't know if you had to take like a journalism class when you were in college. There was like this stupid thing where I
think we had the same writing professor.
I don't know if they axed it at the, like, because I know you would have had to, but they axed it eventually. I had to take a journalism class in college. I'm not a journalist. I never wanted to be one, but I had to take a journalism class. And something I learned was that newspapers, at least today, are written at a 5th grade reading level. And it's not, it's not necessarily because people are dumber today or anything. It's because the whole point of the news is to report the news. And people have different levels of education. And at the end of the day, you need people to know what's going on in the world. And you don't want to, like, you don't need to put in a 16-syllable SAT word, like, to explain that there was an earthquake in Omaha, Nebraska. Just say what happened, So maybe back in the day, at least based on that Variety review, it makes me kind of think that they did use more flowery language back then because more people read things than went to the movies. No one had televisions at this point in history. So I don't know. Maybe that has something to do with it. But yeah, like people were more educated. And the facts, like I will say, for the time, I was actually kind of shocked at the murder because I was like, wow, this is kind of graphic for 1948.
Yeah.
So I could see that being kind of disturbing to people to actually watch someone get choked to death. So maybe that was off-putting. Also, the whole one-take cinematography might have been kind of jarring to people at the time. And the color.
That's what I arrived at based on the reviews that I read, is the fact that he shot this like a play. It really is like a play.
Although not even. Well, the thing is, like, so I was impressed by the cinematography. It's funny. So I recently rewatched Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, which is so similar to this movie in that it's based on a play. It all takes place in one location, and it doesn't stop. It's also like way longer than this. It's like 2 hours and 20 minutes. But if you haven't seen it, it is unrelenting. It is such a hard watch because it is just the most destructive marriage ever put to film. But I like the way they get around it is by actually having location changes in the film that were not in the play. Mm-hmm. And then also having like breaks in the action where they go to different parts of the house. Like there's a whole soliloquy that's like done in the backyard of the house and stuff. The thing I think is really neat about this film is that there's a lot of camera movement and creative transitions, and the fact there are no cuts. Like, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf is much more like classic cinematography. There are cuts. They don't like try and linger on things as much. And it's kind of worth bringing that film up because it did win Best Cinematography that year, I think 1964. Because like when you have a play like this, it is a question. How do you get around the fact that this is all like action playing out in one set? And I was very impressed with how they did it in this film because it kept it engaging. And I liked how instead of cutting to something, the camera would move into something. It was very like fluid the way that it kind of danced between all of the different characters. And it was like set on a dolly. So it's, and this is another thing too. You learn this in cinematography in films. It's like, how do you make something more cinematic or exciting? Move the camera.
Right.
If you're just putting it on a tripod and shooting the action, it'll work. But whenever you go and see these like Hollywood blockbusters, the camera never sits still. So if you want people to be engaged in what they're watching, move the camera, whether it's on a dolly or a crane or something, like move it around, because that gets people excited about what they're seeing, rather than it just being on a stick and seeing like a static image. Obviously depends on what kind of vibe you're going for as well, but that's something I thought was really, but again, like cinematography wise, this film is actually super impressive for 1948, both with the one shot, which it's not, but you know, feeling like it's one continuous shot, and also just knowing how to move the camera to keep it feeling fresh and feeling like you're not stuck in one location. Like you did, this film doesn't feel claustrophobic in the way that it could have.
I feel like it feels claustrophobic but on purpose, because it almost feels like the apartment gets smaller as the night goes on.
The situation is what makes it feel claustrophobic. Exactly. Like, frankly, the camera feels like another guest at the party, kind of like, you know, moving in between people in different conversations, right?
Right. One nosy ass guest.
Right? Yeah. So like that's one of the things I actually think is way ahead of its time. I'm getting like it's reminding me of Marty McFly, you know, oh, you might not be into this, but your kids are gonna love it.
Yeah. Well, you know, it also, one of the things that struck me about this is when I said it was shot like a play, I mean it very much has what's the word I'm looking for? A fourth wall.
Yes.
And
well, you never see the other side of the apartment either.
Yeah, you never see the side that you're on, like the stage,
exactly,
like a stage event, because like, you know, they do something, you can see that there is a full room. This felt at the very beginning, it felt very much to me like almost like I Love Lucy, like a sitcom, the way the apartment was staged and everything. And so I kind of understand why for a movie, when, you know, especially at the time, still movies were like this grand spectacle still, you know, just even like the lowly ones, it was going to transfer. If people felt like they were on a stage, they're not as impressed or as interested. And I think, and I think that's why he didn't work for people, is because it didn't feel like the spectacle you would expect with a movie. Now this, I don't know how far this is into his, I didn't look at what he'd released before this. I don't know if he had his big, you know, namesake, like it's a Hitchcock movie, go see it, because I believe this was still before, this was still before Psycho, still before The Birds, still before... Oh,
it's before everything. It's before North by Northwest. Like, this is... You saying that it's his first American film?
No, this is his first color film. His first American film was Rebecca.
Makes sense. Well, and Rebecca was in the 30s, too. It's interesting. So, clearly, like, he'd been making films, and I think he did have a reputation for being a great director at this point. But... it's funny because whenever you hear, like, what are the best Hitchcock films, it's like the 50s, basically. 50s and early 60s.
Yeah.
You know, because, like, probably more the 60s. It's, you know, I have a Hitchcock collection. It's missing North by Northwest, but it's got Psycho, it's got The Birds, it's got Rear Window, and it's got Vertigo. And those are, like, the ones that he's known for being, like, the master for. Yeah. And those were like basically at the end of his career. So it is kind of interesting that you bring that up, because frankly, again, it's so fascinating to me that this did not do well, because it's got all of the hallmarks of his craft. All of the things he's known for doing are present in this film, and they're done effectively, in my opinion. So it's very strange that it didn't gel with people. Like, the only thing... well, I'll even bring up, like, I mentioned Dial M for Murder is one that I watched when I was kind of like, oh, I need to watch more Hitchcock movies in high school. And I remember thinking it kind of sucked. Like, because it's similar to this one. It's based on a play. You've got a kind of megalomaniacal murderer who, like, believes that he can outsmart the police. and you know what he did before the, like, it's got that whole dramatic irony thing where you know how he did the murder, and then like at the very end of the movie there's kind of the whole big, oh, I know how you did it because you did this and then this and then this, and I don't know, like there was something kind of boring about it, like especially it has such a cool poster and it's one of the ones that's considered a classic, so I was very disappointed, and maybe I'll rewatch it someday. But it was kind of interesting watching this because I was like, this reminds me of Dial M for Murder, but it feels, I was much more engaged with this. Like I enjoyed this quite a lot.
Well, you are a couple of things. One, I think I checked. This was kind of like early mid of his career. This was after Lifeboat. I don't know if you ever saw Lifeboat.
Yeah.
But you're a John Steinbeck girly, so you probably did. What was I trying to say? But you're also cinematography girly, so I went and pulled a book. This is called Hitchcock's Notebooks by Dan Auler, Auiler. And I thought you would find this particularly interesting. He talks about the shooting of this movie. So just so you know, there were only 10 cuts in the whole movie.
Makes sense.
And so the director of photography, Jack Cardoff, said, "We would rehearse one whole day and shoot the next. Good recorded sound was impossible. The noise was indescribable. The electric crane lumbered through sets like a tank at Sebastopol. Whole walls cracked open, furniture was whisked away by panting prop men, and then frantically replaced in position as the crane made a return trip. The sound department did exceptionally well to get a guide track, as picking up dialogue above the din so that correct soundtrack could be matched to it later." They said that when we had made a successful 10-minute take, everyone had to leave the studio except the sound people, Hitch, the script girl, and the cast, who would then go through the motions with dialogue without the camera. Amazingly, by sliding the sound tape back and forward, it all came together. They also said, I think I marked it on another page. I'm on the Strangers Love a Train page. They also said, here we go. There we go. Rope. They said the execution of the long 10-minute takes was never simple. A single error meant an entire reel of film would be worthless. For example, Hitchcock discovered after a week's work that the color was wrong outside the apartment windows, and all of the footage had to be reshot. So yeah, basically, there's only 10 cuts. They are all the cuts are about approximately every 9 to 11 minutes because that was the length of a reel. The last one, I think the ninth reel is a little bit shorter because he had to put the cut somewhere sooner, and so the last reel I think is only 2 minutes. But yeah, so that's actually impressive. Could you imagine working on that set and having to run furniture in and out and then place it properly before the camera came back? That's nuts.
Well, that's like something that's easy to forget that makes this even more impressive is like, I mean, so like even today, you know, cinema cameras are different than your iPhone or, you know, a personal DSLR camera or something. They're a lot bigger, but way more in 1948. So doing something like having one continuous shot move fluidly throughout a dinner party scene, it's already really difficult today, but back in those days, like you had a freaking setup that was like a camera, a cinema camera back then. It was like moving a Mini Cooper around.
Right.
Like it was bigger. You did not have, I'm not surprised it made a lot of noise. Because that too, like you didn't have like really nice electric dollies and cranes and things like that. It probably, who knows, it could have run on diesel gas.
Yeah, right.
So I'm not surprised, but that's like another thing that's like easy to forget if you're watching this today. But like back then, you really cannot fathom how difficult moving the camera was.
Well, there's that, and there's the fact that they had to match up sound to stuff that was not even like, I mean, like it was recorded, but it almost had to be like where the actor, you had to literally deliver everything exactly the same so that they could match the dialogue from the non-camera take to this, and I think that's absolutely wild.
Well, and that's kind of, I mean, I don't know how common ADR was back in this period, but like nowadays, another thing I don't think a lot of people realize about film is like the sound you're hearing was not recorded at the same time as the film. Most of the time, like they'll record sound on set just so you have something to like reference, but they are going back to this, to a sound recording studio, and all pretty much all of the dialogue you hear was recorded after the photography. Lord of the Rings is a perfect example. You're out in the middle of like the woods in New Zealand. You're not going to get crisp audio. So like all of the stuff you're hearing was recorded months later, to them like just trying to match their lips when they're watching it on the screen. So I don't know if it was done quite the same way with this film, but this might have been maybe the start of that. That's actually something Christopher Nolan was getting kind of roasted about a few years ago, is like until very recently he he recorded his sound on set. And that's probably why a lot of his mixes are so weird, where it's like you can barely hear people talking, but all the explosions are super loud. So that was something back 2 years ago I mentioned with Oppenheimer. I was like, oh, his sound sounds way better than it used to.
We were all very
and we'll
happy.
see about the Odyssey, but yeah, like that's like a thing I don't think people realize, is it's like you're basically recording a musical album months after you shoot the film, because like you can't have good audio on set. Maybe you'll find an audio engineer who's just really good at getting that one take, but most of the time it's part of the post-production process. Like they have like the finished cut that you're syncing your voice to, and that's how you deal with it, because on set you got all sorts of noise. Yeah. I'm not surprised. I'm just surprised that apparently it was something I guess they didn't do back then.
No, yeah, back then I think sound was recorded at the same time. And even if like it was like that, like it is now, which I mean it would have been possible back then, they would have, a visual cue to sync their sound up to. They had to go off of perfectly rehearsed performances and like what lived in their mind, and that's, to me, that's what made it so difficult for them to pull this off. Now, I did mention that this does have roots in reality. Who's ready to be disturbed?
Me.
Okay, so The Rope, the play, is in it's not really an adaptation. I would say that it just draws inspiration from the crime of the murder of Bobby Franks, I believe his name was. Now this poor kid, he was like 14, and Nathan Leopold and Richard Loeb, 19 and 18, again, much like they talk about in this movie, they kill him not because necessarily they wanted to or they needed to just because they could, because they were to prove that they were intellectually superior, which is a major point of conversation in this film. Huge trial. At the time, it was the crime of the century. They both ended up going to prison. I do think it's ironic that in this movie, Jamie Stewart's character at the end is talking about how they'll pay for their crimes through death. They just got life in prison. They had a very good lawyer who according to Wikipedia, gave an 8-hour summation at their sentencing hearing, noted for its influential criticism of capital punishment as retributive rather than transformative justice, which I guess this whole thing is still talked about as far as that in the legal world. But because they got life in prison, one of them was killed in prison, the other one was released, I want to say it was in the 1950s. And yeah, he was released, etc., etc. Not that interesting, but This is the movie. This movie is based on the play, which is based on the death of Bobby Frankel, which when you take the ages into account, that's a very disturbing crime. And I'm not going to go into what they did. They did some messed up stuff, like pouring acid over people. It's nuts. This is a very tame crime compared to what happened in real life with them. But they were both had, and I think they even talk about it in the movie. They talked about them having a Superman delusion. That they were above other people. And that's a big conversation. It's a very tense conversation. It's a very interesting conversation that I feel like on some levels we're still having today. But much like many people come before them, they were brought down by the hinge on a set of glasses that were left behind. When you want to talk about what unraveled your grand plan. So that's interesting hearing about that. I just want to talk sort of about the basis of the story.
Doesn't sound very intellectually superior for them to do that.
I don't understand what was intellectually superior about any of this, but
so
that's what they believe.
Did you say where the crime was committed? What's
Chicago?
Was it the United Chicago? Oh, of course, the murder capital. No.
Oh my God, calm down.
Wasn't that? Well, maybe I'm being. Isn't that like in the musical Chicago? They say something along those lines. I don't know.
Probably because it was considered. What is it called? At the time, there was still lots of gangsters and all this other fun stuff. So.
Well, I think the word you were probably looking for is prohibition.
Thank you. Because let me see. I think it took
Al
place
Capone, baby.
I think it took place back in, I want to say 1924.
I was going to say, because you also said another kind of interesting thing, because the whole Superman Ubermensch thing. So the play came out in 1929. This film came out in 1948. When they are going on their little megalomaniacal, well, I say they, I basically mean John Dahl's character, Brandon. He's going on his megalomaniacal thing, and they actually kind of bring up Hitler because that was something he thought is like, my race is superior to yours, therefore you should be killed off or whatever. This is kind of a good segue into the other thing I thought was really good is the acting in general, but frankly, John Dahl kind of stole the show as Brandon. He's like charismatic, but he's also really slimy. Yeah. There's like that whole thing he's doing, kind of manipulating that woman he used to date into like getting with the new guy because he knows that her fiance is dead. And Jim, yes.
I was going to say, well, actually finish your thought because I think what I'm going to say plays into this.
Well, Jimmy Stewart's good. He doesn't really like do much until, he's kind of, I don't know. He's the one who's on to them for the whole story. And then he kind of gets to shine with his little speech at the end of the movie. But it's sort of, his thunder is stolen by the murderers, more or less, because he's kind of quiet. The other thing I thought was really interesting is like, so it's brought up that Brandon got this idea from Rupert, and Rupert kind of like, it's almost like more of like dark humor with him, but I never really understood what his joke was. He's like, there should be strangulation Sundays. And it's like, what are you talking about? There is kind of the difference.
It's basically kind of like, I guess, in my understanding it was like that scene in Titanic where Rose says, they're just sitting around basically congratulating themselves on being masters of the universe. That's basically what they're saying. They're basically have like such obnoxious egos. They feel like they're literally intellectually superior and above everybody else, and that they can decide who lives, who dies. Now, they makes a very
I get that with John Dahl. Like, I get that with Brandon, and I get that. Well, Philip is like, for the whole thing, he's regretting everything. With Brandon, he makes it very clear it's because he thinks he's better than the people he's killing. Jimmy Stewart, Rupert, does not say that. He just like says like, "Oh yeah, killing should be legal and there should be like he never explains what he means. He never says like, "Oh, I'm intellectually superior to other people." And that's part of his little like speech at the end. It's like how you take something I said and twist it into this. It's like, what were you trying to say, man? Were you?
I think it started
like, he never explains himself earlier.
I think it starts off really more as like a joke, as like, oh, the problems of the world, basically the inconveniences they have every day would be fine if we could just kill people. That was the joke part. What it gets into weird thing is when Brandon jumps in and is like, yeah, and there's certain people who are morally superior, and because not morally, intellectually superior, that morals don't apply to them. And the other guy's like, yeah, I guess he was kind of like agreeing with him. But the difference between the two of them, I mean, their values are both, his values are messed up too. And that's kind of what the point at the end of the movie is he says the difference is like, I can like talk about this, but like, I don't actually want to do it. But you wanted to,
because even early on, he seems like flabbergasted by what Brandon's saying, and I'm kind of like, why is it shocking to you that this is the line that he's going towards? Because again, like he never talks about intellectual superiority. He just says like, oh yeah, you should be allowed to kill people.
But he does talk about that he does mention there is, for whatever it is, there's the best people are the ones who can do that, or whatever. I forget what the term is he uses. He uses something to describe, basically like the top. He's just trying to say like the top 1% of people, whatever. And then that's when the old guy goes into the thing. It's wild
that he feels the need to lecture them at the end of the movie. Because it's like, again, to me, I'm just kind of like, why are you shocked that this is the conclusion that they drew? Like, especially like he's an educator. He was like a teacher. He was the housemaster at their prep school. And it's just kind of like, why would you say this to like kids? I don't know. It's interesting. And that's kind of another thing with this film being ahead of its time. Like at the beginning of this episode, I made a joke about school shooters, but like, how different are Brandon and Philip from like the Columbine boys?
I mean, based on the characters they were based on, not much really.
Right? And that's another thing, like people in those reviews you were reading off were talking about how chilling and all this other stuff. And it's kind of like, yeah, that's the point. The fact it's based on a true story, it's almost like the point of the movie was lost on people at the time. And obviously, like, there weren't school shooters in that era, but it's just like, yeah, these people exist.
Yeah.
Like, people like this it's funny, again, like, today, I think this film has aged very well, both from, like, the cinematic techniques that he used, but also just, like, the social commentary. Because even today, like, you get, like, even, like, people bringing race into it and stuff like that. It's like, there are genuinely a lot of people who think that they are superior to other people and should be, allowed to decide whether they live or die.
I was like, oh my god, who was that one guy? I'm trying to think of who it is now. He was in California. Remember, he couldn't get like with any girls.
Oh, Elliot Rodger.
Thank you, him. He's like one of these people.
Careful, you'll get our podcast pulled since his daddy is a big Hollywood guy that got everyone's YouTube videos pulled.
Oh my god, that's so embarrassing for them. But since we're talking about
him, Mr. Rodger, anyway.
Right. Since we're talking about the people and what makes them so, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Do you know what the elephant in the room is? I want to see if you picked up on it.
I don't know. That's kind of a vague question. What is the elephant in the room? I'm sure it'll be obvious when you say.
Obviously gay subtext. Like, you didn't read them as a couple?
Oh, you mean Philip and Brandon?
Yes.
Not really. I didn't pick up on that. But do go on.
So one of the things I said earlier in this movie. So the crimes that they were based off of, those guys were hooking up. So in the play, it's much more obvious that they were together. And then in this one, because of how they toned it down. But it was really, really funny because I was reading. Well, first off, let me say I said I put an asterisk by a couple people's names. So we do have some prominent gays in here that made this movie possible. Arthur Lawrence was gay. John Dahl, the guy who played the main person, not confirmation, but film historians are pretty sure that he was gay. And then Farley Granger was openly bisexual. So the two main guys, we have that. And so they made this film possible. And I was reading about on Wikipedia, they pulled some quotes, and Lawrence, the guy who wrote it, says, I don't think censors at the time realized that this was about gay people. They didn't have a clue what was and what wasn't, and that's how we got by. In another quote, Granger says of Brandon and Philip, we knew they were gay, yeah, sure. I mean, nobody said anything about it. This was 1947, let's not forget that, but that was one of the points of the film in a way. So the people who made it were very obvious of it. And it's very, very interesting that, you know, despite them being despicable people, Philip and Brandon, I'm like, this is kind of like now like one of my favorite early portrayals of gays because they're so disturbingly humanized. I don't know if that makes sense.
I get why I didn't notice now that I know that Hollywood kind of probably omitted a lot of more obvious things. I think the big thing, like, Philip seems to be afraid of Brandon from what I was reading. And for a lot of the dinner party, they're kind of apart from each other. So that's why I didn't really read into, now that you bring it up, I can kind of look back and see, oh yeah, you know, they do seem to be kind of close, but I don't know. Like, it's also, maybe it's because I'm a modern dude and these days it's like if there's a gay couple, they're gonna kiss or something. So maybe, you know,
there was a couple times at the beginning of the movie I was like, kiss. No, but like, I mean, if you look at, and again, it's be stereotyping, but if you look at this, it's two single, well-dressed men. They have a gorgeous apartment. It's well appointed, well decorated. They have things like fine china, crystal. These are stereotypes, but for back then, that's not necessarily what, you know, a man's man would have. And the fact that he sit around and talk about it, like, he's like, oh yeah, I think I'll keep this glass, even though he drank out of it, because it's crystal. It's really good crystal. You know, stuff like that is how they got the subtext by. They would rely on stereotyping, for lack of a better term, but it is important. I do think that these kind of characters did get portrayed back then because they also do seem like, except for the fact that they're crazy, they do just seem like
that was something I was kind of going to bring up. Yeah, that was something I was getting. You know, obviously at the time, gay people were not celebrated like they are today, but especially considering some of the players were. I was kind of like, isn't that sort of a choice then, making these absolute psychopaths gay? Because now it's kind of like, especially at the time, you could be like, they're all like that. Oh, they all think that way. They think they're superior to us. They're going to murder us because they're gay. So I don't know. That's maybe it was kind of good that it was subtext and not like on the face. So you say the actual murderers were like they were gay. So
yeah,
what was it? Were they still like, so the actual killing, it was because they believed they were intellectually superior to the guy that they murdered, right? Or like, was it?
Let me pull up so I can read exactly what they said. From my understanding, it was that they were, I forget the word, Ubermenschen, I think is the word that
Ubermensch. Well, I guess my main question is, was the homosexuality relevant to the story? You know what I mean? Like, was there a reason that they wanted to include that?
I mean, there is a possibility that it had to do with these type of people would do something like this. There is that possibility. But the fact that the story works with so much of it overtly omitted, I kind of feel like, in a way, it's progressive. Because, as, you know, Granger said, you just know that they're gay. They don't say anything or really do anything. I mean, like I said, there is some stereotypical things like that They just happen to be. And I think it just, like I said, in the play, it did come with the fact that it was sort of an adaptation of the crime. Now, I do think that had more to do with the fact that, oh yeah, these type of people would do something this disturbing and messed up. But I do think when it translated from the play to the movie and the crime was less disturbing than in real life, I do think that it kind of came more of like a background thing that explained their connection to each other, but not necessarily, because I feel like there's a reason why Philip stays more than just he's friends with this guy, because he's the one that regrets everything right away. So I do think it is important that reason for them to be romantically involved, but I do think perhaps, and again I have not read the play, it serves a less malicious purpose than potentially the play did.
I get that. I think I'm just kind of curious, what was the point of the inclusion if it's not going to be addressed, and if it's also not meant to be like the point of why they... I'm torn, right? Because one thing I do think is important, and that is kind of lost today, is that you don't want like gay characters to be like perfect and like morally they're people, right? They're flawed. Right. And I feel like these days, especially, like, people do not want to make it come across like that they're walking on eggshells, right? Because, like, you want to include characters like that, but you also don't want to imply that their homosexuality is a moral failing. So I don't want to, like, say, like, oh, they should have gone full in or something. I think I'm just kind of like, what is the point of including that if you're not going to be overt about it? And also, why include it if, at the time, it could have been interpreted as the reason for their psychopathy? You know what I mean?
I think Hitchcock, in his way, because he wasn't stupid. They didn't talk about it, but he was not stupid.
Yeah.
I think for him, it was there to truly bind people together. Like there's that whole thing about, like, you know, the husband and wife. Like, when she finds out he's a murderer, does she stay, and why? And I think that's kind of what keeps them, because as you said, Philip is like one step from the ledge every 3 seconds. And I do feel like what keeps him involved in this and keeps him from maybe blowing the lid off sooner or something than he does is because of the relationship that they are in. So I do think it is important wise. I mean, I feel like this could have still worked if they had made it a man and a woman. But
yeah, I think the reason I didn't see that when I...
interesting and subversive. Go ahead.
Well, like, so I do think that your interpretation makes sense. I think part of the reason I didn't see it that way is the way I read the situation, especially with some lines of dialogue. I didn't think he didn't leave because he loved Brandon. I thought he wasn't going to squeal because he was afraid of Brandon. And he even says, like, at the beginning, like, you scare me sometimes and stuff. And I mean, they just murdered one of their schoolmates. And I was kind of under the impression when I was watching this, again, the overtones didn't really reach me. I didn't notice that they kind of had a romantic thing going. The dynamic that I was under the impression of is, oh, I better not say anything or I'll be next.
That may have also crossed his mind, but I mean, if you think, they put it in the phrase of like an abusive relationship.
Yeah. No, it kind of like again.
Like,
I
mean,
when you
even their getaway was to like a country cabin. I mean, like, come on.
Fair enough. But yeah, no, it's neat. It's messy. Again, like it's one of those things where I'm kind of like, I don't know. Here's a question. So it's Rope in parentheses 1948. It's that way on, Amazon where I rented it. And spookily enough, before you decided that this was going to be your pick for this topic, I actually had this recommended to me on like, or not recommended, but it like came up on some film thing on like on social media.
You might also like.
Right before you, right? I don't know if it's because it was like reading, like it knew that you were going to pick it or something. Technology's spooky these days. But the 1948 was interesting to me because I'm like, okay, are there other versions of this? Has it been adapted to film multiple times?
Well, I do know. I don't think this particular the story of Bobby Frank's murder has been adapted several times, not in this form. I think the Rope 1948 refers back because, like, when I was looking it up, there was also some Australian drama called Rope, different year, unrelated, and so I think it's just to distinguish the two.
Okay, gotcha. So it's just because there's another thing with the same title.
Which it's weird because this was released in the US, but then again, Alfred Hitchcock did come from the UK because the UK play was called Rope. When it came over to the US, it was called End of the Rope. Yeah, but no, I think that's why they all say 1948 is because like there's a drama unrelated from Australia also called Rope. I know because I clicked on it on accident.
Dang, I thought I might be, going down a rabbit hole where it's like, oh yes, there's the 2013 Rope or something like that. So okay, that
we need to watch them all. Comparison. No, but I think. But one of the things I love about this movie is I love the dialogue in this because it's so like it's theatrical, which I think is one of the problems people had. It felt too over the top because when you're on a stage, you kind of have to be loud. I think they kept a lot of sort of the dialogue from my understanding. But I love how on the nose a lot of it is, and that like the characters don't know how on the nose they are. Like there's so many references to strangles or being hung, or it's like that's just casually being mentioned in conversation just naturally is hilarious to me. Like this dialogue is so funny because you're like, oh, they know what that's about.
No, and I got that too. I kind of interpreted that as, because they think, well, at least Brandon thinks that this is like so funny. So I always kind of took it as like his sick sense of humor, being witty with like the way that and that too, like he says a lot of things like rope related, or just even the fact that he has the rope on him with the dinner party. Like there's that flaunting of the crime. Like, oh, they don't know that he's in the book cabinet and all of that. Like, so
I love at the end,
and that too, like,
go ahead.
Well, and the fact that this is based on a stage play, the dialogue's got to be good because, like, when it was a stage play, it had to be good, or else it would be
right.
Like that's dialogue is really important with theater, probably even more so than with film, because
I love at the end it becomes very much a game of they don't know, he doesn't know, like when he calls, he doesn't know that we know that he knows what's going on. Yeah, but what if he knows that we know that he knows? It's just, I don't know, it becomes a whole, I think that's not what they're saying, but that's very much what's going on, and it's kind of hilarious. And I love how they finally get the police there. He just like shoots out the window. I'm like, that didn't kill anybody, but okay. There's lots of just
it's like funny too because
there's so much hilarity in this movie. Regardless of how tense it is a very tense 90 minutes because you keep waiting for something to happen, but there's so much funny in it.
Yeah, well, and that's like kind of a thing for the time too, the whole firing a gun out the window. At least nowadays, I know, so just like from various incidents in the news and like with, different personalities and stuff. Firing, just in case anyone doesn't know, firing a gun into the air is actually a crime. So it is kind of funny that Jimmy Stewart does that, because it's like, maybe it was different in 1948, but today it's like, oh, you did that? Okay, well, you're also getting arrested for doing that.
Yeah.
And that too, like, I guess they needed something exciting to call the police, because I was just thinking, like, why don't you just call the police? Like, you've got the gun. What are they going to do?
I mean, the guy was...
You know what I mean?
I just
Yeah, he has a gun. Like if
that's
they,
right.
if
The
they
guy
make
with the gun
move,
is usually the one we need to tackle.
I mean, true, but still, like, I mean, that's still true for if he fires the gun into the air.
Yeah,
If
that is
anything,
true.
he's more likely to get tackled because, oh, hey, he's the one holding the gun. And then the murderers can be like, yeah, he broke in here. This is our apartment. He's
And
crazy.
strangled a guy and
He
threw
thinks,
him in a trunk.
yeah. Yeah, he admitted to this crime that he strangled our schoolmate because he thinks he's intellectually superior. You can ask anyone at our prep school. He talked about it all the time.
Well, they even make
So
that.
yeah,
They even
like
make that whole thing
that
about.
kind of annoyed me too. I was
They make that thing about his like favorite stories when he was a kid was about dead bodies being locked places.
yeah, he went off on this tangent about strangling chickens.
That was there was a
that's
lot.
that's like
So many
something
red
that,
flags.
well, that's something that bothered me. I was like, call the police. Like, it's, you know, one of those things where, again, maybe it was just for the spectacle and the theatrics, but I was just like, you literally are holding a gun. They can't, maybe they could try to tackle you or something, but just shoot them. Like,
Well, I think it's because
hey.
he literally had his back to the wall at that point, and I think he was too frightened to take his eyes off them. Because we have one guy.
I guess so, but he wasn't too frightened enough to do like a big dramatic speech.
I know.
Where he also takes his eyes off them and
convenience.
walks and paces around the room. Again, like, it's, you know, it's nitpicky. I always hate it when people do that with movies and stuff. It was just something that was annoying me, and I was just like, oh, really? Like, firing a gun into the air was the way that you're going to call the cops?
Now, we're reaching the end here, but we have to discuss really quickly, where was the cameo? Where was the cameo?
Oh, shoot! I forgot.
I didn't see it. I had to look it up.
Would have to. Well, it would have to have been in the opening credits because, you know, for the credits, really good song, by the way. I haven't shouted out the music. Really enjoyed the very little amounts of music that was in this movie. But so in the opening credits, it's just a static shot of the sidewalk with people walking before, you know, it goes into the window and you hear a scream and then you see him getting strangled. So it would have to have been on that sidewalk.
So it wasn't. Actually, I looked up what the official cameo is, and I actually kind of think this is cheating. But the official cameo occurs at 55 minutes and 19 seconds. And if you look out the window, there is a blinking sign with, I think it's his silhouette in it. And that's his cameo. And it's for a weight loss company. I know, that's what I thought. I was like, that's cheating. You can't say that, but they said that
I do.
It's for like a weight loss company, I think is what they said. It's for like Reducio or something like that. Which I'm going to
give him a vote. I think he's cheating, but I will give him some bonus points because that is funny. I always like it when people have a good self-aware, you know, self-flagellating kind of humor. Haha, I'm fat. Get it? It's a weight loss thing. So I will say that's funny. I still think he cheated on that one, but that is a funny cameo.
But yeah, so what did you think? So that we're closing up here, what was your final thoughts?
It's really good. You know, obviously there's not that much to talk about because you said 90 minutes. It's not 90 minutes. It's 80 minutes.
It's 80 minutes. I thought for some reason I thought it was 90.
I mean, 90 is like the bare minimum these days. Although, you know, Naked Gun, 85 minutes, so it's you know, under 90. But you know, short movie, short and sweet. I think that a lot of the subject matter and techniques used are far above its time. So, you know, as far as the reaction at the time, I think it's just people not understanding, you know, innovation when it was there. I enjoyed this a lot. I compared it to Dial M for Murder because, like I said, at the time, my teenage self thought that it was kind of underwhelming. Maybe I'd feel different if I watch it again today, but this felt like a better version of that because it is also like a very quick story, good villains, John Dahl steals the show. I think he's the best actor in this whole thing. I think he
Which is
shows
sad
up
because
Jimmy Stewart.
He doesn't really become a star after this. I feel so bad.
Right? Well, it goes to show sometimes, character actors are the stars of the program. So A+ to him. He, in my opinion, was like the best actor in this whole film. He was great at being creepy and also being kind of domineering of Philip. He was very attractive and charming. Like he's the devil, and he was like a great villain. I love his taunting too. Like I mentioned that with his dialogue, but also how he has the rope on him and he's like swinging it playfully and stuff. How he bound the books with the rope to give to the father of the man he just murdered. Like
he's definitely like when you hear that serial killers like want to get caught, or he's definitely that person. He would have been one of the people that like the Zodiac would have been sending letters, but like, y'all are too dumb to catch me.
I don't even care that it might be offensive to people. I keep bringing up school shooters, but there is a reason school shooters write a manifesto every time. It's because they want attention. So again, like this is well before the era of that kind of crime, but that's what these two remind me of a lot. So loved this. I would watch it again. I think it is an underappreciated Hitchcock film. It is not my favorite. I do like things like Rear Window, where there's a little bit more production value, but for such a bare bones story, it's really amazing how engaging it is for being, in one location and being such a brief story. So for me, it's a 3 out of 4 glasses of whiskey.
I love this movie a lot. It's a very good Alfred Hitchcock movie. I think it's better than some of his well-known ones. Personally, I never got into the whole spy thing with North by Northwest. I personally think this is better than North by Northwest. People disagree with me on that. I'm going to go ahead and give this 4 out of 4 pitchers of sweet tea. I think it's really, really good. I know. It's like almost perfectly, it's perfectly executed. It's pioneering, but in a way that works. It's not just pioneering for being pioneering or gimmicky. He was really trying to bring us into how melodramatic a lot of the stuff like around murder can be. And I think by staging it almost like a play and shooting it almost like a play like that, he really captured it perfectly. So 4 out of 4 pitchers of sweet tea. But as always, what do y'all think? Do your voice.
What do you think? If you're listening to this on YouTube Music, you can comment. If you want, you can hit us up on social media and stuff. We are on Letterboxd. So we'll leave our links in the description, or whatever they call that on the
it's
other
in
podcast
the description
platforms.
Both places. I can
Both places. Good. As far as contacting us, I guess we have a Twitter. I don't know what the deal is with that, but we'll always be open to reviewing things if you guys ever request them. Still hasn't happened yet, but there's a first time for everything. But until next time, I've been Whiskey.
I've been Sweet Tea.
Keeping it Kino.
And suck it Scorsese.
Peace out, y'all. We will be returning very soon with a new pairing.
Yes, and you're not intellectually superior. Don't kill anyone. Bye.
Bye.
Reels on the Rocks is a production of La Prince Laboratories. It is edited and produced by Alejandro Castillo and programmed by Jamie King. Original music is provided by Pat Mars, and original artwork by Asa Sparza.